Hello, namaste. Welcome to Dev's Hammer Show. This is weekly English talk show on Indigenous television and ITV Nepal. This talk show features in-person and online interviews of a guest from diverse backgrounds. We discuss on the issues impacting Indigenous peoples worldwide. We bring the experiences and foster a connection between communities. Today I have a very special guest from Global Voices. Global Voices is one of the renowned and global organizations, which is the headquarters which is based in Netherlands. This year Global Voices celebrates its 20th anniversary, and Global Voices actually had organized its Global Voices Summit 2024 in Kathmandu. So I have invited Avila, Director of Rising Voices, which is a special program under the Global Voices, which basically partners with the communities, especially Indigenous communities worldwide. So let me first welcome Adi to my show. Welcome, Adi.
Thank you. Namaste.
So as I said in background, a bit about your background. Could you briefly introduce yourself to start with our conversation, please?
Yeah, as I mentioned, Eddie Avila, I'm the Rising Voices Director of Global Voices, and we work with communities around the world that want to take advantage of digital media, digital tools to be able to meet their self-determined goals and needs. And many of that is around languages, how many communities are using digital media and the internet to promote their language in digital spaces. And as we know, the internet can be a very big motivator, especially for young people, to see their language and culture reflected on the internet. And so we do that by creating peer networks, training, mentoring, and also amplification, which means we're highlighting interesting projects around the world so that more people can be inspired by them.
So you talked more about the Global Voices. Is there a different, as I said in background to the Rising Voices, there is also from outside? Is it a part of the, under the Global Voices, or Rising Voices are different? What is it? What is the difference?
So Global Voices is the umbrella organization, and it has many different sections, including our newsroom, where we have a community that writes about topics that aren't represented in the mainstream media. So a special focus on underrepresented voices so that you can get a better sense of what's happening around the world. Then we have our translation section called Lingua, which translates news from English into 35 different languages.
Wow.
So including Nepali, which we have a strong community here. So someone who reads and writes in Nepali, they can find out what's happening in the Middle East, they can find out what's happening in Latin America, even if they don't speak those languages, Arabic and Spanish. We also have our Advox department, which works with freedom of expression issues, then also our Civic Media Observatory, that is a research focused on narratives on how communities are represented in the media. So it's a very diverse group, and Rising Voices fits within that as sort of the puzzle to help communities share understanding about one another.
So when we talk about the language issue, many organizations or many government actually, they take these language issues is very challenging in the sense that each and every countries have multiple languages. Sure. And it's really difficult to work in different languages or more than one languages. So as you said, Rising Voices actually works with more than 35 different languages. So why this a multilingual medium is important to introduce in the digital platform or media platform? Why is it? And whether there is any challenges while introducing or integrating this multilingual platform?
Yeah, so our Lingua works with the translation, but Rising Voices works with individuals and communities from more than 150 languages around the world. And so we're supporting them for them to communicate and create information, knowledge in their own language. And basically these individuals are taking it upon themselves, not waiting for the government or other organizations to create content for them, but rather they're doing it themselves. And so we support them because we know that language contains a lot of knowledge, information, history, and once a language goes sleeping, then you lose a lot of that. So we work with a lot of inspiring people who are trying to do something for the language through digital media, through documentation, through social media, through lots of different channels. And so it's really inspiring to see that.
And I'm really happy having you at the Indigenous Television studio. I have been following the rising global voices, especially from 2019, where I listened about the global voices, which was one of the official media partner of the UNESCO or UN, when UN actually had declared the International Year of Indigenous Languages. By then, Indigenous Television was also part of this global movement, or let's say official media partner too. So could you just tell me how the global voices actually engaged with the indigenous languages?
Yeah, so I think we brought to the campaign, to the International Year and now the International Decade, drawing attention to inspiring projects around the world. Because that's really important, that we're not telling communities that you need to have your language on the internet, but rather if you're interested, then we can help you, start using digital media, whether it's, again, so many different platforms. And so drawing inspiration from other projects, and we hear that all the time. We say, I like what they're doing. I want to do something similar with my language, whether it's Wikipedia or videos or podcasts. There's really a lot of options. And so how can we support those communities that want to use digital media? And so with the campaign, we feel like we draw more attention, raise awareness about the possibilities.
That means the indigenous peoples worldwide are having a challenges to access the mainstream media. So as you said, the Global Voices actually trains the indigenous communities, how to access the, freely available social media. Is that so?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, more than ever, it's easier, maybe more cost effective to have, quality recording even on your phone. It's very professional now. Maybe 20 years ago, you need to have a big camera, you need to have a recording studio, but now it's much easier for anyone to record. And so I think it's a really powerful message, and it opens up opportunities for more people to represent themselves in their own language. And you look on YouTube, you look on TikTok, there's so much more linguistic diversity than maybe 20 years ago. And that's thanks to all these tools, all these examples. And so I think it's going to continue to grow, the number of languages represented online, which doesn't mean that the internet's going to, solve all the challenges, but I think it can be part of the solution, together with public policy, bilingual education, lots of different changes, but I think digital activism can be a part of that solution.
All right. So in the past, it was really difficult for indigenous peoples to access mainstream media, but now, as you said, with the access of smartphone and the social medias, now they can use their own languages, and they can use they can give their voices to the global community, right? So I have seen that Global Voices also has developed a kind of online manual as well, how to use the social media or their language having a presence online, right? Could you tell me about that, your initiative, and how the indigenous community can use that manual and how they can get benefited from?
So we've had maybe about almost 15, 16 years working with communities who are using digital media, and it's grown ever since. And I think we've learned a lot, we've listened a lot, we've heard a lot of great experiences, challenges, strategies, solutions. And so how can we take that information and work with the communities so we can help other communities? And so we partnered with UNESCO as part of the International Year to create a toolkit for digital initiatives for indigenous languages. And by no means it's a step-by-step guide, but rather it's a document so that communities can reflect and choose their own path. Because like I said, there's so many different options. You could do video, audio, memes, Instagram. And so for one person, that could be very overwhelming to try to do every platform. And so because time and resources are limited, it may be more effective to choose one strategy based off, the impact they'd like to see, whether it's, changing the attitudes of young children towards their language. Maybe you would do animation, you would do, video games, because that's what would appeal to those young people. And so basically the guide is a way for communities to reflect and decide their own path forward and learn from other examples. And so in the resource we included different examples of different strategies, and people can learn from that and say, I'd like to do the same for my language. And if you look online, there's so many more tutorials on how to use editors, video editors, creating memes. So I think once people decide what they'd like to do, then there's other ways for them to get to where they want to go.
All right. So the communities who are out there in the world wide, but if they want to access the global voices or if they want to collaborate, what is the means? How can they reach you out, and how they can get the support from you guys, especially from the global voices?
Yeah. So we have our website, rising.globalvoices.org. That's the Rising Voices section, and then Global Voices is globalvoices.org. We have a team of regional editors who are looking for stories, looking for information from around the world that aren't represented in the mainstream media, and they'd be happy to collaborate. And then for Rising Voices, this toolkit is on our website, also on the website of UNESCO, that it could be downloaded. Right now it's only available in English and Spanish, but hopefully in the future it'll be more languages. We're running a number of workshops as well, both virtually and in person. And interesting, a lot of those workshops are in the local language. For example, we ran a workshop in Guatemala and in Bolivia in the Cachiquel and Quechua language, and that sends a very powerful message that technology and digital media can also be discussed in the language. Language is not only about traditions or culture, but it could be about anything. And I think that's a very powerful message.
You talked about the discussions, and I had the privilege to attend the Global Voices Summit, which I think provided a kind of spaces for diverse background to come together and discuss. Could you tell me how the Global Voices actually started with this, Global Voices Summit, and today this time it is what ninth edition you said, right? This is ninth edition that you organized.
Yeah.
Could you just tell us the stories of how the Global Voices started the summit, and what is exactly the aims behind this summit?
Yeah, so most of our work is done online, remotely, and so we work together most of the year online, internet, and we don't necessarily, meet with one another. But every 2 years, every 3 years, we try to bring as many people together who are writers, translators, and activists to come together to meet face to face, talk about our strategies, talk about the future, but also have fun. I think that's really one of the characteristics of the summit is we bring people from 50 different countries, speaking 80 different languages, for them to think about how to make the internet a better place. And that means, more safe, it means more multilingual, it means, covering stories that aren't in the mainstream media. So I think it's a way for the community to get together. And like you said, this is the 8th or 9th summit that we held since 2005. And one of the reasons why we chose Nepal is because of, we have a strong local community here with Global Voices in Nepali. And we also know that there's lots of interesting, organizations like Indigenous TV, Indigenous media, and also because it's a focal point of, diversity. And so that's what really that mirrors Global Voices' values as well. And so that's why we came to Nepal. And many of our members are now traveling the country to meet the people, to learn about, daily life. And I think that's been one of the highlights of this summit. So it's a 5-day summit where we brought together our community.
This year you organized it was only for 2 days, but I really liked your session, especially reflecting the multilingual, or you actually brought the different fellows from different countries and then their initiative. Could you just tell me that how some of the initiative that you have undertaken to support to the communities to revive their languages into the media? Could you reflect your own particular session that was focused with the multilingual reflection kind?
Yeah, one of our programs is called the Catalyst Program, where we support different speakers of indigenous languages in Mexico and then now Colombia and Guatemala who want to engage their community through a digital project. And so we support them through a small micro grant. But in many projects, you give someone a grant and you say, well, come back in a year, show me the report. But that's not our strategy. It's our approach is, let's build a supportive community with mentors, with a peer learning community, so that they don't feel alone. They feel like they're doing this together with others. And so we were able to bring 3 of those participants from our Mayan languages program in southern Mexico. We have 3 groups of fellows who are doing the same project, the same program, and it was really great for them to be able to tell their story in their own words and showcase what they're doing, because that's really important. It's much more powerful for them to tell their story than for us telling their story for them, and that's not our approach. Our approach is creating a space where they can share what they're doing. And so that's our main program with Rising Voices, and then we also have another number of initiatives in terms of an online directory where we invite people to share their projects, and where other people can find them and be inspired by them. So you can look by country, by language, but also by platform. So you could say, I want to see all the projects in Nepal. You click on Nepal and you could see the different projects. Do you want to see all the projects around podcasting? So you can see different projects. So it's really fascinating, and we've met so many inspiring people through this process.
I like your concept of not one, apart from giving grant, you actually help them build a kind of peer. Could you just tell me that strategy once again, in an easy way, that you also give a grant together with mentorship, or what was that, that strategy? Could you tell me once?
Yeah, a big challenge is the lack of resources, whether it's simply to buy, a new camera or to buy recording equipment, microphone. We know that's really important, but also, if it's a documentation project, to provide an honorarium for the elders because they're giving their time and knowledge, and so that's built into that. So we're able to provide a small grant to cover those costs. But then we also have, maybe a group of 10 fellows. They meet together once a month online to talk about their projects, talk about their challenges, and not for us to solve them for them, but others to say, oh, I went through the same thing. Maybe you want to try this, or I think that's really an important part for, that knowledge sharing. And then we also work with peer mentors who are also in their shoes many years ago, that are from the same community, know the context, maybe went through the same challenges, that they could provide their own support as well. So, this peer learning network is, everyone is an expert on something. No one is more of an expert than others. Everyone has something to teach. Everyone has something to learn. And so it's really a horizontal, structure where everyone is, contributing something. And that's been really a great part of it. And then we have a local summit at the end of each year in one of the regions in Mexico, where we bring people together and they share their experiences, but get to know one another. Because yes, working virtually is great, but nothing replaces, face-to-face meetings.
But okay, when you talk about the grants or collaborations or networking, Indigenous peoples spatially live in the grassroots level, and grant making, they also don't have access to the grant making as well, or even skills to write a proposal in appropriate manner that the donors actually look for, right? So in that sense, I like your ideas of giving mentorship and helping them build up a kind of community as well. So what is your next plan, as you have come up to Nepal and you also organized this summit as well, and you met to the communities? What is your next plan?
Yeah, I think this Catalyst program has a lot of potential, and we receive requests all the time. When will you have this for my country? And we're hoping to expand that. We met with a lot of great activists here in Nepal, from the Wikimedia communities, through individuals doing documentation, and so we're going to continue to see how we could collaborate with them. But I think this is really a movement that's growing with social media, internet, and how we could play a role in supporting that. So we're always listening, trying to find new partners and try to build, because this was really great. We had individuals from Mexico meet with people in Nepal, meet with activists from Nigeria, activists from Indonesia, from Taiwan. And this was really a groundbreaking event, because in the past we would maybe meet regionally, maybe Latin America, but to bring people from around the world, I think it's going to only, move things forward.
All right. So, the focus of the global summit is not only the indigenous peoples, but also other. But you focus mostly on minority groups, right? Or those who don't have a voices in the media.
They have voices, but maybe they may not have the access, or maybe mainstream media may not necessarily pay attention to them. So we try to bridge that by inviting them to participate in the platform. But we also know there's lots of topics around, digital security, about keeping people safe online. There's information about dis and misinformation, about AI. I know it's a main topic, and how citizens can, take advantage of some of the benefits, but also be very cautious about what that means in terms of data, and that really especially affects indigenous communities, data sovereignty, how indigenous communities can protect their information, their knowledge. I think having those conversations, we may not resolve everything now in the summit, but I think asking those questions is really important, and finding others who share similar viewpoints.
So since you have experience of working at least for more than two decades even, so what way do you think, what are some of the ways that can be addressed, can actually help these minority groups or marginalized indigenous communities so that they can have access, participations, and voice in the media?
I think the first is, helping them reflect on their own representation, how they're reflected in the media. And I think they would have very strong opinions of whether they're included in the mainstream media and how they can get involved, whether it's creating their own media, whether it's working with other groups to be able to produce media like you do here, the very, very powerful platform for different communities to see themselves represented on the screen. So I think the first step is just raising awareness about that, and then connecting them with different groups, whether it's training, whether it's simply distributing what they already have. I think it's really important what you do, offer a platform for artists to be able to share their work with a wider audience, because that's really important. And so I think that's what Global Voices tries to do, is be that bridge, whether we train them, whether we provide mentoring community, or just simply say we have a platform, we'd love to share what you already have. So, and then that reaches a global audience, which is really important, I think, for community to see their work is more well known around the world. And that's a very powerful motivator to continue to do what they do.
But the bad side is also that there are the initiative that the community themselves have undertaken, but the government is not letting them do or continue, or making them putting them a pressure to in their initiative as well, so that those initiators or defenders have been working under threat too, right? They are not secured enough. In that situations, how Global Voices actually are helping to those defenders who are at the front, but actively working to the communities? Or is there any ways that Global Voices can help in advocacy to pressurize to the government so that the government can legally recognize them as well?
Yeah, maybe not so much with the government, but working with tech companies, other activist groups. For example, at the summit, we had partners come in who are digital security experts, and our attendees could access their services, whether it's scanning their device to see if there's any malware or surveillance software on there, but also understanding that there's lots of different groups that provide services, help desks about keeping themselves safe. And so we try to convene the space where it's a safe space to access those services, but also to help those digital security organizations access diverse communities, because there sometimes needs to be an intermediary to help interpret some of the concepts, some of the terminology, because it can be very technical. We know more and more people are using smartphones, and understanding in terms of data, in terms of how companies use data, some of the threats that you talked about. So I think we could maybe help, convey some of those concepts, some of those terminologies, and especially in the same language. Because we've done some projects where we worked with activists that, translated or localized information back into the local language where maybe there hasn't been before. So I think it's really important to be able to localize information and tools in those languages.
But one of the things, as you said, what you said, the technical companies. I mean, there's this what?
Tech companies. Yeah.
Tech companies. Yeah. Tech companies are also one of the agents that are violating the indigenous people's right whenever we talk about, besides the government. And there was a lot of discussion about how these tech companies can be made responsible or accountable towards this violation as well. So, how we can work together, and so that, these tech companies, number of tech companies which are ruling around the world, is there any way that we can make them accountable so that they also can, pay for the community or benefits? They can share any benefits to the communities back.
That's part of the advocacy campaigns, how groups can join together and have a common voice, because I think in numbers there's more power. So there's a number of organizations that do similar things, but again, I think many of the organizations may not be aware of issues facing grassroots communities. So the challenge is, how do we get them included in the conversation? I think we're trying to do that, whether there's big conferences around digital rights, how can many different groups bring people who aren't represented in those settings to have a voice, but also learn about the concepts, learn about the issues so that they can advocate for themselves. Again, that's more powerful when communities advocate for themselves and talk about, this is how your policies may be affecting us. And so I think that's something, it's an ongoing challenge. How can we work with the community so that they're included in those policy making discussions?
So we have reached almost at the end of the show. So we mostly discuss around the Global Voices and its initiative. So at last, I would like to request you anything that you want to share that I didn't ask you, but you want to share, or any kinds of messages on behalf of this Global Voices. Perhaps you can you have some messages to the community that they want to partner with or collaborate with.
First of all, I want to thank the country of Nepal, very hospitable, country, welcome the whole community with open arms. Again, everyone is, impressed by, the beauty of the country, the people, the food. People really love the food, and I think that really makes our experience here important. So I think we're very determined to continue these conversations. People we've met here, how can we work together? How can we be a platform to amplify their voices? So I think this isn't a experience where we come in for a conference, leave, and then forget about this experience, but rather it's going to be the start of something instead of the end of something. So when the summit ends, we don't start. It's a new chapter, and so we're really looking forward to working with all the different groups we've met here. And I really appreciate the invitation. I know we've been in touch over email for many years, and we were able to meet finally here, and I appreciate the invitation to be able to talk about our community, and I know we'll continue to be in touch going forward.
Thank you, Eddie Avila, thank you so much for visiting Indigenous Television Studio and also sharing your thoughts.
Thank you.
So with this, we have reached at the end of the show, but our conversation continues. If you have any queries or feedbacks regarding the program, you can reach us at indigenous-television@gmail.com. Please join us next week with the new episode, brand new episodes. We'll come up to discuss with new guests and new topics. By then, have a nice weekend. Namaste.